All right. It is the final week of the NFL season. It is Super Bowl weekend. We obviously took a break from last week, didn't do any Pro Bowl stuff expectedly. So here we are. We'll quickly recap and kind of do the whole what are we bringing forward with us for this week from last week that we've been doing for all these playoff games. And then we'll get right into our kind of summary roundup and picks. So the first game, I think we'll start with Eagles 49ers, right? It was hard to gauge. Obviously, the Eagles came out swinging, um, and with Brock Purdy getting injured in the first quarter, um, he kind of shut down the offense of the 49ers completely. They weren't able to pass the ball. Uh, Obviously, relying on an emergency QB in a conference championship game is not ideal. So I don't really know if you can even consider blaming the 49ers, just given how much injury to the quarterback position they've had all year. But the Eagles obviously, performed very well. Mike, what are you taking forward with you from that game? Was there anything that highlighted itself to you that concerns you for the Eagles, or something that you're excited about?
Um, I think I think Philly's pass rush really impressed me probably the most in that game because yes, I mean the quarterbacks were out of it early, but the quarterbacks were out of it because Philly was able to get to the quarterback and nobody was talking about Hassan Reddick going into that game. Really, it was more the guys up the middle, and Brandon Graham's a more familiar name, so I think that shows like the flexibility and the versatility of this Eagles defensive line, and I think that Kansas City's offensive line has had issues in the Super Bowl. Obviously, they've tried to retool it, but I still like these dudes are mean, man. They are just like they're just a bunch of mean motherfuckers, and they are. I you just see it in the way they play. So I think that's what I'm taking forward offensively for the Eagles. I mean, there wasn't a lot to do for long stretches of that game. They got done what they needed to get done. I thought they were impressive on the opening drive, even though it took like a actually unconverted fourth down to get the touchdown. But I thought before that, even they looked confident and fired up, and I expect similar things from them going forward. So yeah, I thought it was an impressive performance by the Eagles, but I think um, their defensive line and their versatility on offense is what jumps out from that win.
For me, it was kind of hard to gauge what to bring forward from the Eagles. I've been no, I guess, stranger to saying that I think the Eagles have had a very easy road to get here, and I think that, when you're playing a team that has one quarterback left and he gets injured, I think it's another easy victory that maybe doesn't test you. I was impressed with how explosive they can be at times. It seemed like you would blink and the Eagles would drive down the field and score. They either not so much force a turnover, but do a quick three and out, and then they drive down the field and score again. So it quickly got out of hand for the 49ers. But it kind of seems like we're going to the Super Bowl watching two teams who play very similar. Like the Chiefs are known for uh, not necessarily an air raid, but almost an air raid. Patrick Mahomes very mobile. There's a lot of similarities between Hurts and Mahomes in the mobility, the speed, the arm strength, the accuracy. Mahomes maybe does some more like trick passes or like cool look passes, but I don't know that like translates necessarily to points. But I think what kind of impressed me is if you discount, and we'll talk about the Bengals Chiefs game in a second. If you discount, you know, Mahomes probably isn't injured at this point. I think we're seeing two very explosive offenses coming against each other, and two defenses who are also very good. So I think it's a great matchup. But I nothing really stood out to me from the Eagles that I saw in that game because I don't think they were forced to show anything that they haven't shown yet. If that makes sense.
No, that's fair. I mean, yeah, and I think intentionally you could see in the way that they called plays at the end of that game, they were deliberately trying to not shoot anything. So yeah,
Correct.
I think that's fair.
Correct. Much closer of a game was the Bengals Chiefs game. You thought when there's about 3 minutes left and um, the Bengals get the ball and balls in Joe Burrow's hands, yada yada yada. You think maybe here's Kansas City in trouble, but no, they get a huge three down third down stop, get the ball back, drive down the field, and typical Chiefs fashion, no time is too much time, and they get in field goal range, kick the field goal. I know there was a late hit out of bounds, yada yada yada. There's complaints about the officiating. I'm not going to talk about that. I was impressed because I think either the severity of the original injury to Mahomes was maybe overstated or maybe purposefully miscategorized as a high ankle sprain, or he is able to heal a high ankle sprain like no human in history. Either way, I think what we saw in that game was Mahomes was a little slower, but I think with an additional 2 weeks, having not played last week, with arguably the best medical care for a high ankle sprain in the country, given that he's a pro football quarterback going into the Super Bowl, I think he's going to be 100% healthy. He's not even listed on the injury report for the Chiefs this week. Um, so to me, what I'm taking forward is that I don't think you should be betting as if Mahomes is in any way injured, right? Maybe he re-injures it, and that's something to keep in mind. But the idea that Mahomes is injured or somewhat like weakened because of that injury, I don't think that's the case anymore. And you know, if a high ankle sprain heals in 4 to 6 weeks with the amount of time he's had, 3 is probably enough. Where I would be shocked if we see a difference in how Mahomes acts and looks on the field. That was my takeaway.
I thought that Mahomes was noticeably hobbled. I think there were some plays where he had to move outside of the pocket. Where when he got to the sideline, you could tell that he's not running the ball. Beyond the line of scrimmage, he would. I think right now with the state of his ankle, it seemed like they were content to take him taking a shot or throwing it out of bounds and taking the incomplete pass than putting him at risk of running the ball, even in a close game. So he'll be better. I think that if he's not willing to at least pick up some yards when they're there in this game, the that's an important. I think they've got to show that early. Like Kansas City has to show that early to at least force Philly to chase him down in coverage or from the defensive line, as opposed to just sort of guide him out of bounds. Because I think that when teams are focused on his ability to run the football, receivers come open on the back end. So um, I think that's where I see the. You're right. You don't bet him like he's injured, but I think that little minute situation may have an impact on this game if they don't want to put him at risk of running the ball. For the Chiefs overall, I thought it was another just gutsy win. Yeah, I think there were some calls, not the hit out of bounds, but I think the couple blocks in the back and the holding on that play.
Yeah, that the punt return block in the backs missed alleged missed block in the backs. I think was more egregious than that was a late hit out of bounds,
It
and I
was no,
certainly
absolutely. I don't think you can argue that it wasn't. I think the Bengals probably should have got a holding call on that play too. I think they had a couple linemen coming free, and that would have at least negated the penalty, which I think would have been nice to see because at least that's not how the game was decided, right? That was the worst part of that game. I don't think anybody really could complain about calling that. I think it's more the fact that that is what decided the game, not and Bucker's still going to make the kick, and who knows? They get it on the next play, and he drills a long field goal anyway. But at least there would be a little bit more legitimacy. But anyway, um, no, I thought it was a gutsy win. I think I was obviously very wrong about the Chiefs' defensive line. I still doubt their ability to have as nearly as big an impact on this game because the Bengals' backup offensive line is not the Eagles' offensive line with another 2 weeks to rest up Lane Johnson and Jordan Mailata. So I think that'll be an interesting, thing to see early on is is Philly able to control that side of the line of scrimmage because they've done it most of the year. I thought from an offensive standpoint, I think the Chiefs did not do the things that have cost them games against the Bengals in previous seasons. They didn't run the dumb plays, the ring around the rosy, the pitch handoff to Tyreek Hill, those kind of plays that kind of set them back and change the momentum of games. They didn't do that. A little sneak peek here. I don't know if that continues. I think both coaches here may have some things cooked up for this game, um, but I think that Kansas City is such a talented offense, and they have so many different ways they can attack you. Mahomes is obviously a great quarterback, but I think their ability to stay disciplined in this game, which is not something we've seen them do in the Super Bowl. You know what I mean? So it's not necessarily like we're expecting that, but I think it could be important, and I think that there's a risk if Andy Reid goes outside of that game script and tries to get a little nuts against this Philly defense. There could be that could be a momentum changing play. I think, and it's I think either coach is prone to it, and we'll see which one kind of resists that temptation, or if they both do.
Well, it'll be interesting to see. So let's kind of get into the um, meat of it. I'll start. Just give a quick rundown here. So there's three players that have gotten an update from the injury report. Uh, McCole Hardman is out for the Super Bowl, but Clyde Edwards-Helaire is probable, and so is Kadarius Toney. So that kind of helps the Chiefs out. Um, Two of their I would argue, most injured key backs are coming and being able to play for this game. And then the Eagles really have had a season where, aside from a few, early season injuries, like nothing has come up in the playoffs. Nothing came out late in the season. I think Josh Sweat was ruled out, but that was the only change from the past couple weeks, and that hasn't really changed since late December for the Eagles. So they're lucky there. Um, but we'll get right into it. So Super Bowl Sunday, 5:30 Central, 6:30 Eastern Time kickoff. The line opened Chiefs -2. It's now at Chiefs. I see it at +1.5.
Yeah,
And then the over under right now opened at 49.5, jumped a point up to 50.5.
yeah,
So
I'm seeing it at 51.
are you really? Okay.
Yeah,
So there's yeah, depending on what book, probably a little fluctuation. But obviously two very, very evenly matched teams. So it'll be interesting to see. No real weather concerns. 60 degrees, 10-mile-an-hour ish winds is what the current call for is right now. But obviously, State Farm Stadium I believe it has a dome, right? I'm looking right now. I believe it's a
yeah, it does.
retractable.
It
It
does.
has a
There's
yeah.
no weather concern.
So nothing to like really be concerned of there. So let's break it down, Mike. First, let's do props, and then we'll get into the straight either money line, spread, or total picks. But give me your props, run them down for me real quick, and then we'll go from there.
So off the top, I'm going to take the one that has the worst odds, and we'll go backwards up. I've got four. I'll start with the one that has the worst odds and work my way to the one long shot that I have. So at -104, I have Kenneth Gainwell to rush for over 30 yards. And Gainwell's become more consistently involved in this offense. They use him as a spell back, and he's been fantastic for them. And I went back and looked, and it wasn't just like me watching the game. His last three games, he against San Francisco, he had 14 carries for 48 yards, along with two catches. The final week against the Giants, which makes sense because he was starting, but he had 12 carries for 112 yards. That's 9.3 a tote with a tutter. And then the game before that, he had five carries but 35 yards also against the Giants. So he's he's been progressively more involved in this offense. And I think that continues in this game. I think he's like my X factor, like sneaky dark horse pick on this Philly offense that's going to have a big impact in this game. So even if you want to take him not like crazy on a to score a touchdown line, or take this alternate at a much higher yardage, like 50. I wouldn't hate that either. I'm taking it at 30 just because it's slightly below um, his average over the past few games, and uh, it's right around even. So when I drive to Virginia to place my legal wagers, I'm going to take Kenneth Gainwell 30 over 30 yards. Next one, I have the Eagles getting the most sacks. That's even money right now. I think the Chiefs are plus 120, but the Eagles are even money, and then a tie is plus 350. I was so impressed with the way Hassan Reddick played. I think that Kansas City will scheme up their protections to um, try to negate Hassan Reddick. One, I don't think that works, but two, even if they are somewhat successful in doing that, I feel like this Eagles offensive line is not the kind of offensive line you can really shade against because everybody 8 deep is a mauler. So it's I just don't see. Combine that with the fact that the Eagles have a really good offensive line and the more mobile quarterback in this game who has uh, the better opportunities to elude pressure. I think Eagles most sacks here makes the most sense, especially at even money. I would have thought this would have been minus money at a minimum. So then my third one I have this is a hedge on my Super Bowl future. So I've got Philly just as a preview. I've got Philly plus 275 to win the Super Bowl, so I'm not touching the spread. But I have a 3 outcome parlay of Mahomes to have 3+ touchdowns, Kansas City to win, and the team total over 26.5. And that's at plus 359. And that's just a hedge for me because the way that Mahomes wins this game is they've got to score through the air and they've got to be consistent passing the ball and keep the Eagles on their heels. Um, and so that would most likely lend itself to them scoring 3+ touchdowns through the air. That gets you to 21. You add in a rushing touchdown somewhere. Now you're at 28. Kansas City wins the game at that point, and you hit all 3 outcomes, and that's my hedge. So um, hopefully they don't win a slugfest, which would be the worst possible outcome for me. But my last one, this is my crazy one, and I alluded to this earlier. I think these two coaches specifically have a propensity to get a little nuts. And so I'm taking a non QB touchdown pass at plus 1900. Um, that's, Philly special the last time Philly was in the Super Bowl, obviously. That number seems a little high when one side of it is Andy Reid and the other side is the Eagles in the Super Bowl. So
Yeah,
I like the value there. So I am going to take a non quarterback touchdown pass for plus 1900.
I don't hate it. I don't hate it. Um, I have a few props. The first one, and obviously you'll kind of see where I think this game is going to go. Justin Hurts under 246.5 passing yards. He's only reached that mark, I believe, 6 times this year. Um, and usually it's against bad teams. He did it against Chicago, Tennessee when he threw for almost 400 in a very explosive game. Uh, Pittsburgh, who wasn't that great this year, the first time they played Washington, and then against Minnesota when they beat them very early in the season. Those are the only times he has not done it yet in the playoffs. I think they're very reliant on his mobility. So I think under 246 passing yards is a reasonable ask. The next two are a little weird. It's a combo. Uh, Justin Watson on the Chiefs, I have him under 1.5 receptions and under 16.5 yards. He's had 12 receptions this year. Um, only one in the postseason, and the one he had in the postseason went for only 12 yards. So I don't think the Chiefs are going to switch this up very much, especially with the health of their wide receiver core going up, as we mentioned earlier. So I think Justin Watson will not have a reception. I think if he does have one reception, it'll be under 16.5 yards. I have also Justin Hurts over 1.5 touchdown at plus 130. So I just think he'll throw an interception. There's no real reading into this. I think there's going to be an interception in this game. I don't think it'll be Patrick Mahomes. The long shot, I have two long shots. One,
The only
Mahomes. Yeah.
Real quick, the only thing I was going to say is I thought Justin Watson got injured either right before the playoffs or during the playoffs. I'll keep looking, but good.
So
Sorry.
he
Which lends more support to your prop.
So I see him as having played the last 2 weeks of the regular season. I'm sorry, no, he's been healthy. I think he only missed one Saturday, very late in the, or one Sunday game late in the season. On the, I'm looking right now. Hold on. No, he has no. He wasn't injured. He
Yeah, it looks
played
like he
week
didn't.
18,
He didn't
17.
play. He didn't play in the AFC Championship game. Here it is, due to an illness.
Oh, right. He had like a fever or something.
Yeah,
But in any case, he's been playing all the other games. He's not a bad, he's not bad. It's just
yeah,
they don't utilize him because the tools that are available to them. So I just think that'll continue. I don't think they have anything special cooking up for him.
yep.
Um, the two long shots I have, Mahomes anytime TD. Obviously, that means he has to physically carry the ball into the end zone, not pass it. And then my long shot at plus 1300, Jody Fortson, the tight end number 2 for the Chiefs. I think he will have a touchdown reception, so that's plus
Mm.
1300. So anytime touchdown score, rather. He's been targeted 6 times. Or I'm sorry, he's been targeted 8 times with 6 receptions this year. However, of those 6 receptions, he has 2 uh, catch touchdowns. So they utilize him specifically in the red zone when they want to distract with Kelsey and then have Jody Fortson kind of peel off. He hasn't had a target or reception yet in the postseason, which is why this is the long shot. But I think, given the ratio of touchdowns to receptions, I think there's a decent chance that he can score a touchdown. So I'm going to take that as my longest shot. Um, let's get into the spread, money line, total picks. So, like you said, Mike, you had a future on them. So basically, you have Eagles money line just at a higher plus. Um,
Yeah, oh yeah. Plus, I have Eagles money line, but at plus 275 because for some
yeah,
reason
basically.
nobody thought they were going to win the Super Bowl before the NFC Championship game. Um, and I don't. Not only do I have them, but I really love them here. I don't know. This feels to me, and I'll my other one on the total. I'm gonna take it. I'm leaning, so I'm still taking it, but just at a third of a unit. The under 51. I think this number's ballooned too much, especially for the game script I see here, which is just I think this feels like Tampa Bay, Kansas City esque. Um,
Hopefully, a
in
little
that
more entertaining.
Yeah, I don't think it'll be that bad. Yeah, I'm not. That's not what I'm saying. I don't think this is going to be a dominating sort of game, but it does just feel to me like yes, Patrick Mahomes is Patrick Mahomes, but he's slightly injured, which he was in that game. Even I think they're going to minimize the impact of the injury as much as possible, but I think he will. I think there will be at least enough to alter his behavior, and when you add that on top of this Philly defensive line and this Philly offensive line, and it just feels like another one of those games where Kansas City just sort of gets kind of beat up. And it, like I said, it won't be like Tampa Bay. I don't think it'll be a dominant win, but I think it'll be noticeable enough that it's what makes the difference in this game. I think doesn't get out to more than a 10-point lead, but I think Kansas City just has a tough time coming back, or they keep tying it and Philly keeps scoring. But I think ultimately this game will end under. I think like 27-23 here makes sense, 24-21. I think lower than expected scoring wise, but it's just, I think Philly does what they've done all season, which is just lean on teams and wear on them when they're, fully healthy. I think Sirianni in a stupid, awkward way gets this team fired up, and they come out and they not smush, but like push, just gradually push Kansas City, or like they win basically a longer drawn out tug of war. Um, Metaphorically in this game. And so, yeah, I think Kansas City will be frustrated. They'll be in a similar situation where they wonder, how they can keep adding to this offensive line, even though it should be on paper good enough to win them Super Bowl. But I don't even think it's that. I think Philly's just, their roster is just so good and tough and mean. And I think that's their path to victory here.
So, like I've been saying, I think obviously we're on opposite sides here. I think the Chiefs are going to win. This is obviously a strong hope of mine, as I am a known Eagles hater. But I do think there's something about the Chiefs. I believe in regression to the mean. I've said that multiple times in multiple episodes. The Chiefs have been here more recently. Mahomes has been in a Super Bowl. Hurts has not. I think that matters. I think the Eagles of 6 years ago, that there's a complete turnover almost, except for Kelsey under center and a few others. Um, so I personally think that the recency of the Chiefs going back to the Super Bowl and the dominance that they've had matters because they've played in more games that matter more. I also think Mahomes is probably less injured than we think. I think they're going to. I mean, there is no other game to play, right? You turn it up for this game, no matter what you have to do. You get him not feeling any pain and able to run on that leg, and I think they've done that already. And I think there will be things they do medically to assure that. In sort of like painkiller kind of way, localized injections, etc. So I think he will be healthy across the board. I think they have a very explosive offense. I think they can control the ball. And as I've said, I think the way to beat the Eagles, as we have seen with Jalen Hurts, is to partially, in some way, control the ball, keep the ball away from them. I think it really does come down to, in a large part, turnovers. I know that's such a cliche, but I don't see any team with a negative turnover differential of greater than one winning this game. So if you have like a two interception day on either side of the ball and the other quarterback's not throwing an INT, I think that decides the game because I genuinely think these are probably the two best teams in the NFL. Obviously, the seeding says so as well, but we truly have a 1-1 matchup. So I think in that regard, the Chiefs, in my mind, have an edge, not because of maybe their defensive line isn't as good as the Eagles, but they got a great offensive line. They got, a very mobile quarterback. And I think their receiving core and the assets that Mahomes has is just greater than the assets that Hurts has. Sirianni hasn't been in this position in the Super Bowl yet. Hurts hasn't been in this position in the Super Bowl yet. You know, Not saying it's not going to happen, but the fact that everyone is there's a lot of recency bias in these bets, and people see how the Eagles have dominated teams, not realizing who they have dominated in the playoffs. Because I think they're really like I think the Eagles basically just woke up and were in the Super Bowl, right? Like they played a nobody Giants team who, much like a lot of the NFC East teams, kind of like not snuck, but literally like clawed their way into the playoffs. They beat that team who they've beaten twice already before because they're interdivisional, right? Then they play the 49ers, who are on their third string quarterback technically. He gets hurt. They go to their emergency quarterback and they dominate that game. And now everyone's thinking the Eagles are an unstoppable force moving forward to the Super Bowl. And I just don't think that's the case. And I think they're set to stumble. I think there is a possibility that they lose this game very badly, although I don't see it happening. But I very much see the Chiefs winning by at least a field goal here. So I'm going to take them money line. I think it'll be a pretty high scoring affair. I lean the total over 50.5 here is what I see on one of the books. I would like that up to 51.5 probably. I do think both teams score at least 3 touchdowns each, and then I think whoever wins probably covers that differential there. I can definitely see this being a pretty high scoring affair. But my pick here is Chiefs. I just think they're the better team with more experience in the playoffs and Super Bowls as of late. That's all it comes down to because I think they're very evenly matched.
Yeah, yeah, I would agree. I think your points on experience I think are fair. Um, and yeah, I think Kansas City has some good wins. I still think that San Francisco's roster is the second most talented in the NFL right now. I think when healthy, and not even like Brock Purdy. I mean, like if you had Trey Lance or Jimmy Garoppolo against the Eagles on the neutral field, would be a lot of fun. This roster, so meaning with Christian McCaffrey, obviously. But yeah, no, I could totally see Philly getting out experienced here, and a shootout is obviously bad for them. I think I talk about this a lot, but game script early is going to matter here. Philly, I think, has the imperative more to play from ahead. Philly can't go down in this game early on because they're just not. That's not the situation that is going to lead them to winning. Meanwhile, Kansas City, I think, won't necessarily panic down even multiple scores. I think,
Correct.
even yeah, even 21 for the way that Mahomes early in his career was able to come back after terrible first halves. I think that for the sake of the enjoyment of the game, I hope Philly gets out to a lead just because if Kansas City jumps out early, it'll feel, more impossible for the game to be close than, if Kansas City, besides really that Super Bowl against Tampa Bay, has never really been out of a game even when they're behind. So, yeah, I think this is going to be a lot of fun. I think it's
I,
just two styles make fights. These are two teams that I think win very differently, as far as what they consider the epitome of their success. So I think this game is going to be a very very interesting right from the first kick.
I forgot one bet that I kind of like here. I'm gonna sprinkle these two. First half tie game, end of regulation tie game. Obviously, you can't have a tie in the Super Bowl,
Yeah,
but I think it's possible this game goes to overtime. I think it's very, very possible, but that after the first half, we are completely even, and we do not see like a difference in the teams almost. But should be fun. I'm very excited for the Super Bowl. This is a great matchup, great teams. Um, Thank you for watching. That's been Stupid versus Spread for the entire year. We finally made it to the end of the NFL season. We'll start doing we'll do a Super Bowl wrap up, season wrap up episode probably next week, and then we'll kind of delve into the off season. Probably do like a once every couple weeks update on key events. Probably have a little special for the NFL draft and whatnot. But thank you for watching and like and subscribe. Have a good day.